Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Beat the GMAT Write Like an Expert series. My name is Travis Morgan. I'm our Director of Admissions Consulting for Veritas Prep. And Veritas Prep has actually had a long partnership with Beat the GMAT, and we're very pleased to be able to offer this series with them. So today we're doing Harvard Business School, and I'm sure that many of you are very interested in what we have to say. There's been a number of questions that have come through because Harvard Business School's application has changed quite dramatically in the past year, and we will talk about that. Let me show you our agenda here. So we'll just do some quick introductions. I want to give you a little bit of background on how you will be evaluated by admissions officers so that then you can know how to best respond to the HBS admissions essays. And I do put essays in there because they have just one admissions essay, but they also have a post-interview reflection. We will speak very briefly about that one as well. And then we will leave some time for Q&A at the end. Now, let me tell you though, I have, and we'll get to this in our introductions as well, but I have two of our HBS specialists, Veritas Prep HBS specialists with me in the presentation, Akila and Christopher. And they will be taking questions throughout the entire presentation. So you can submit your questions through the chat box, and they will be selecting the questions that they believe are most broadly applicable to all of the participants and be answering them throughout using the chat box. And then at the end, I will also answer a few questions myself. Just a little key for those questions that will be more likely to be selected are ones that are not directly so specific to your circumstances, such as, oh, I have a 710 GMAT score and I am from the investment banking industry. Should I retake my GMAT, or something very specific to that? We actually have at veritasprep.com a free profile evaluation that you can do for very individual and specific questions, and I will talk more about that at the end of the presentation as well. So let's get right to it. Part number one is the introductions. So here's my background. I'm our Director of Admissions Consulting for Veritas Prep, also a head consultant for Veritas Prep, and have been for a number of years. And I myself went to Kellogg, and I'm a Kellogg alumnus, served on the Student Admissions Committee in the office, was an elected career management rep for my section, served on the Diversity and Inclusion Council. I was host of our new student orientation for the entire new class of 650 students coming to Kellogg and welcoming them to Kellogg. And I was also a member of our alumni admissions organization in assisting with evaluation of candidates. So I have a lot of background in helping people get into business school, and I've worked with a number of people applying to top-tier schools, particularly HBS. If we look at our specialists who are with us today, Akila Rogers and Christopher Laconi were both HBS class of 09, and they have been with us for quite some time. Akila Rogers has worked with candidates applying to business school for over 5 years. Christopher actually started even before he himself graduated from HBS and worked with people starting in 06 in their MBA application shortly after he was admitted. And so we have great experts to answer your questions all along the way, and we will continue to do so in the chat party that will continue on Beat the GMAT after the presentation. Let's get to it. So first, I want to talk about how you will be evaluated by admissions officers. Here's our admissions officer and the huge stack of applications that they have to sort through. Harvard every year sees over 9,000 applications, and so clearly they must have very specific things that they're looking for. Let's see what they're doing and how that affects your goals in your application. Number one, they want to build a class with varied backgrounds and experiences. So a lot of times when I go to events and speak with candidates, they say, oh, what should I say? What should I tell an admissions officer? What do they want to hear? And what is that silver bullet that's going to get me into business school? And the thing is they are actually looking for a wide variety of candidates, not just one silver bullet. So how does that affect your goals? That means that your goal is to differentiate yourself from other candidates. You're not just looking to try to say, oh, what are admissions officers looking for, and I'll just sort of become that person. No, you need to be yourself. You need to differentiate yourself from those other candidates who are out there. Why? Well, when you're in this 90-person section, and do you really want just a clone copy of yourself to the person sitting to the left of you, to the right of you, above you, and below you? No, you want people who can bring different perspectives to that HBS classroom. And so the admissions committee is not just looking for a whole bunch of clones that are all going to be the same thing. They really do look for various backgrounds and experiences. And they have emphasized this even more in the past 3 to 5 years. Number two, they do want, however, candidates who fit with the program. What does that mean? It means that you need to demonstrate fit with the program culturally and professionally. Meaning, if you go in your essay and you decide that you want to tell them all about how you are looking to go into, some very obscure field, and they feel like, oh, maybe HBS is not the best fit for you. Oh, maybe you need to be looking at other degrees, or maybe you need to be looking at other things that will get you to your professional goals, that an MBA perhaps is not the best route for you. They say, oh, this person doesn't really fit with our program. And so you may be a very good candidate. You may actually have very stellar credentials and still be denied because you haven't shown that you can demonstrate fit with the program. We'll talk a little bit more, too, about what this means to demonstrate fit with the program culturally as well, as far as being a part of the HBS community, right? It's not just, they're not just looking for a whole bunch of lone wolves. They want people who will actively contribute to the community as well. Thirdly, they're looking for candidates with attributes to become successful leaders in business school and beyond. And HBS is wildly known for looking for these future leaders, future global leaders that are going to be leading their various industries. They're not looking for one industry or another, but they are looking for those sets of attributes. We call this showing balance across the 4 dimensions of a perfect applicant. And you say, wait a minute, Travis, you just told me there is no silver bullet, there is no perfect applicant. But every admitted applicant will show 4 dimensions, not just one, like a single dimension 1D applicant. They'll show these things. And so we're going to focus on these 3 goals of differentiating yourself from other candidates, demonstrating fit with the program, and showing balance across these 4 dimensions. So keep these in mind as we now analyze how to best write your HBS essays. All right. So you say, well, what are the 4 dimensions of a perfect candidate? The first is leadership potential. Second is innovation, teamwork, and maturity. I'll talk about this very briefly. So leadership potential is honestly best demonstrated by showing that you have taken initiative, that you have taken leadership, that you have been a motivator and a leader of people in the past. And so to demonstrate that, you really need to be looking at your past experiences. Those could be an undergraduate, they could be professional, they could be extracurricular, they could be in community involvement, any of these things. And as we'll see, much of how we demonstrate this in the HBS application is actually outside of the essays. And I think a lot of people tend to ignore some of these things outside of the essays, and we'll speak a little bit about that as well. Secondly, they're looking for innovation. A lot of people tend to think that this means having to come up with new technologies or new inventions or something like this. It's really more of an innovative mindset. We think about this as the combination of intellectual academic ability, kind of your just horsepower, your GPA, your GMAT score, the raw academic abilities combined with creative problem-solving skills. Do you show that innovative mindset when you come to work? Do you discover new ways of getting around problems and issues? Things like this. That is the mindset that they're looking for. Also teamwork. So teamwork in business school today is just a given. You'll be assigned to your learning teams along with your entire 90-person section, and we have that this idea of working together on many, many, many of your deliverables. So while, of course, your own individual contributions in class and things like this are heavily emphasized at HBS, the ability to work in teams is critical. Lastly, maturity. This is both a personal and a professional maturity. So they want to make sure that every single person that is admitted to HBS will carry that brand name well, right? They don't want people who are going to embarrass Harvard Business School. They don't want people who are, through a personal immaturity, not going to be able to carry on that legacy, throughout their life. They're also looking for a professional maturity. This means, do you have the experiences, the depth of experiences in your professional life in order to actively contribute in class? This is a key part of your HBS experience. Interestingly, business school, very different from other professional graduate programs, such as law school, such as medical school, such as dental school, all of these other professional graduate programs, and very different from your undergraduate. What do I mean by this? In your undergraduate program, primarily you're learning from a professor who speaks to students. And it's kind of a one-way street with students raising their hand and asking questions and the occasional discussion and things like this. In the business school setting, particularly at HBS with the case study, it is the students themselves who are driving the conversation, who are introducing the topics, and all of this. So they want to see that you have that professional maturity, that you can bring these experiences with you and be able to contribute to that classroom discussion. And so this is of vital importance to your applications. Okay, now let's dive in very deeply into the HBS application itself and understand how we can apply these principles very specifically. So, I forgot, I have one more slide, and that is, so there's all these other things that demonstrate the 4 dimensions. So you have your GMAT score, your GPA, your professional experience, your community service, extracurriculars, international experience, your cultural exposure. All of these things can be used to support these 4 dimensions of leadership, innovation, teamwork, and maturity. Now, HBS emphasizes this very strongly, to not ignore the other elements of your application. Each of these is used in a very holistic evaluation of you as a candidate. So if we look at the essays here, here's what it is, right? The one admissions essay that is optional says, you're applying to Harvard Business School. We can see your resume, your transcripts, your extracurriculars, your awards, your post-MBA career goals, your test scores, and what your recommenders have to say about you. What else would you like us to know as we consider your candidacy? No word limit. This is a very different approach to the traditional MBA application. In years past, there's been as many as 7 essays in the HBS application, and they've been consistently whittling that down over the years until we now have 1 essay that they say you don't even have to do. And they've been whittling down the total number of words that you can write. Last year, that was limited to 800 words total in the 2 required essays, and that was it. And now they're saying, oh, no limit at all. So I'm sure this raises a lot of questions, right? Is this really an optional essay? Well, here's what Dee Leopold, who is the Director of Admissions for HBS, she says, maybe there will be admits this year who say we don't need to know anything else beyond the credentials that they've already submitted, and for them, the application may be essayless. And we do take her at her word. We would not be surprised one bit if they admitted people who submitted no essay at all, who had very strong credentials that stood for themselves. They fit with their career goals. It was very clear to see why they were applying to HBS. They presented themselves very professionally in the resume and in their answers to these short answer questions that are buried in the application itself, and that they get admitted. In fact, why do we think this? Well, we know of people who've been admitted to HBS in the past with very poor essays. And so if they got admitted with very poor essays in the past, we have no doubt that there could be people who submit no essay at all. However, do we feel like that this is a strategy that should be generally adopted? The answer is no. We do feel like that, of course, every person, or we would think every person would have something else that they might want to contribute, something that they want to say, yes, this is what makes me me. And I cannot just, myself as a human being, cannot just be broken down into a series of statistics and a couple of short answer things, and I would like to help you connect the dots. So is it really optional? Well, yes, it is. We take them at their word. However, we feel like that the better strategy would be to take them up on this essay and write it. Okay, is there really no word limit? Here's what the admissions officer has to say, admissions director has to say. She says, that's it, no word limit. Use your own judgment as to how much to tell us. We have neither a right answer nor a correct length in mind. We will review all the elements of the written application to decide who moves forward to the interview stage of our process. We also take them at their word on this. It isn't like we're trying, we think that they're trying to game us and they really think that there's some sort of a word limit, and if you go over that word limit, then you're just not going to be considered for HBS candidacy, but they're just not going to tell you. No, they don't play these kind of games. However, we do feel that this statement here that says use your own judgment as to how much to tell us is very valuable. And if you look at the trends in admissions, particularly at HBS over the past few years, it has been fewer and fewer and fewer words. And so we give the broad recommendation of saying somewhere between 500 and 1,000 words would probably be most appropriate for this essay. If you're writing significantly more than 1,000 words, then you're probably not putting the most valuable information there, and only that much. Think of this as, in the real world, if you're submitting a report to a C-suite executive, like the CEO of your company, or a chief marketing officer, or someone at the top of the line, how much are you going to write to them? Right? Are you going to write to them, just page after page after page after page, or are you going to keep it concise and make sure that it is the most important things that you want them to know? We believe that one of the reasons why these essays have been whittled down through the years is that this idea of the value to the number of words was not really what they were looking for. It was not ideal. They just found that people were just writing just to write. And things like, oh, why do you want an MBA? And they write this long, long, long essay about it, when really they just want to know, what are your career goals? Like, what are you going to do? And so they've reduced this into short answer into the application, and they just want you to connect the dots with this admissions essay. So don't go on and on and on. Just connect the dots, right? Just make sure that you're putting forth your best information, and that's it. And so being very judicious with your words, I think, is very important. So let me go to the next question. Well, wait a minute. Why just one essay? And D. Leopold has mentioned this very specifically. Why the reduction in essays? Sorry to repeat myself, but it's not an essay writing contest. There is always and will always be great variance in both subject matter and degree of polish in the essays of admitted candidates. What does that mean? You could just hire somebody, if you wanted to, a professional writer, to come in and write your essays for you, and very easily be denied to Harvard Business School or other top tier schools, because they're looking for who you are as a person, not, are you the best writer in the world. This is not like applying to a creative writing or English literature master's degree. It's applying to a business program. And they want to see who you are. Are you a potential leader? Do you have this innovative mindset? Are you a team player? Do you have the depth and the maturity of someone who's really going to contribute to the program? And that's what they're looking for. Now, if you have tons of typos and your thoughts are all over the place and you're not well organized and these sorts of things, that speaks to those 4 attributes, but you don't have to be a professional writer, and this is not what it's all about. So they really want to get to know you and not just see if you can write 7 different essays and who does the best. All right? So really choosing and selecting what you write about is key. And you think, oh my gosh, this is an admissions consultant who's telling me this. Yep, I sure am. Our job is not to, write your essays for you and have them be the most delightful English that you've ever read. No, it's to help you organize your thoughts and to ensure that you are putting your best foot forward and presenting your application. Okay. So what should I write about, right? So remember these 3 goals of differentiate yourself from other candidates. This does not mean come up with wild and crazy stories. This means who are you yourself, right? What makes you different from the person who's going to sit to the left of you and the person who's going to sit to the right of you in that HBS classroom? What makes you you, right? Really do some introspection around this. In fact, we have an exclusive collaboration with the publisher of the Myers-Briggs personality test that really dive into these areas and help you say, oh, what is it that admissions officers are looking for, and how do I present myself that way? Really interesting stuff. Very different from your standard Myers-Briggs stuff. Anyway, keep moving. You need to show fit with the program. We'll talk a little bit about that and how you do it in this essay. And you need to show balance across these 4 dimensions. Let's keep going. Remember, the admissions board wants to get to know you. This is a holistic process. They do not just take the top 900 GMAT scores and average GPAs and admit them, right? That is not how it works. In fact, I know it's a different school, but at Wharton, the admissions director there, Ankur Kumar, is very famous for saying that 75 to 80% of their applicants are academically qualified to come to the school. So just checking the box that you're academically qualified is not good enough, right? Among them, they still have 75 to 80% to choose from. And now they have to decide, okay, who are we going to select? They select them 1 person at a time, and they want to build this class 1 person at a time of these future leaders. So how do you do that? Let your personality and your passions shine through. This should not just be like a high school report on some person named Travis Morgan. It's you! So let your personality come through this essay. Stand out from stereotypes. What does this mean? If you come from a background, a professional background, etc., that has strong stereotypes about it, investment bankers, IT consultants, these people where you say, oh, I know all about you, you're an IT consultant. No, you then need to differentiate yourself from your fellow coworkers. What makes you different from the iBanker who sits to the left of you and to the right of you? What makes you different from the IT manager who sits to the left of you and to the right of you? Don't be afraid to stand out, right? Third, emphasize that you're a part of a community. So don't just act like you're some amazing hero surrounded by idiots. This is not attractive, and so and it's probably not true. Even if it is true, don't emphasize this, right? You want to emphasize the fact that you are part of a community and that you want to continue to be part of a community, right? You are now going to be part of the HBS community. So show how you have fit into this community and what you have done to contribute to that community, right? Through your essay. So I think a lot of people feel like, oh my gosh, I'm applying to Harvard. I have to make myself look amazing. Well, yes, you do, but the way to do that is not to belittle the people around you or try to overcompensate and make yourself seem like the absolute hero in every story. You just need to show what you've done. Just it's that humble confidence, right? Fourth, don't be afraid to show, and this goes right along with it, don't be afraid to show some weakness, right? Don't be afraid to talk about in this essay something that went horribly wrong and what you learned from it, right? Don't be afraid to to say, oh my gosh, when I first started out in my very first job out of undergrad, I did this, and that, and man, everybody, it was really not well received, and I got some really great advice from this mentor who said blah 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 blah, right? And then you learn from it, and then show something that went well. Don't be afraid to use examples or stories of things that maybe didn't go so well. And in fact, this is probably a lesson that we can learn from last year's essays, which said, oh, tell us about something that you did well, and tell us about something that you wish you had done better. They really are looking for people who are that self-analytical, right? Who really look at themselves and say, what are ways that I can improve? What are things that I can do better? And so don't be afraid. We've seen very successful candidates, use stories where things did not go their way, but then showing things that they gained from it. How that contributed to making them themselves. So I have a few strategies for you on ways that you can approach this. Strategy number 1 says find gaps in your app, right? So this is if analyze your profile from an unbiased perspective, or get someone to look at your application for you, preferably someone who knows anything about this, and have them take a look at that and say, where are your gaps? Like, is it very clear that you are a leader and that you have additional leadership potential? Is it very clear that you work well on teams? Is it very clear that you have this innovative mindset, that people come to you to be a problem solver? This sort of thing. Or perhaps you feel like your gap is, oh, I actually only have 1 year of work experience. Do I have the maturity? Do I have the depth of experience that HBS is looking for, right? And then ask yourself, looking at this second bullet point down here, what doesn't just jump off the page? What about your story does not jump off the page? What would you say? Yes, you have all these statistics. Yes, you have all this information about me, but I really want to tell you about this, right? Like, this is what I feel like. What doesn't jump off the page, right? And think about it this way, right? Then you can use that introspection to tell stories that connect the dots and show the narrative from your perspective, right? So what are some stories that you can tell that show the admissions officers how you are going to bridge these gaps, or how you have bridged these gaps? And it depends on the gaps, right? If you think that the gap is that you have this resume that points one direction, but your career goals are completely disconnected from that, then you may use this essay to bridge that gap. If you feel like you, for example, had some sort of issue in undergrad and you didn't get as strong of grades as you would have liked, but your GMAT score is great, you can bridge that gap and say, oh, let me tell you a little bit about who I am and how I approach things, and let me tell you my story of what I learned through undergrad, and and how I've been able to turn that around, and still be able to perform well academically. So a few points on how to tell your story the best. We encourage our clients, and this is nothing revolutionary, you'll see this quite a bit, to use the STAR method, meaning set up the situation or task. So what was the situation that you were faced, or the task that you were given? What was the action that you took? And this could be in context of you and your team, but you certainly want to show what you did as an individual, right? Even though, yes, we're trying to show teamwork, we also need to show the difference between what other people did and what we did, right? And then show the result, right? What came of it? Now the result could be an actual result. Oh, we increased sales by 55% or something like this. But I think more importantly are your personal takeaways. What did you learn from the experience? What did you then do as a result of this in the future that you did differently? How did you apply this to other situations? Things like this, I think, are actually much more important in the essay of showing you results, because if it's just like a number, oh, and then we raised sales by 55%, you can say that in your resume, right? You don't need a whole essay to talk about that. So you want to make it more personal. Also, don't approach this from the perspective of making excuses or trying to explain yourself, right? So approach it from the perspective of telling your legitimate story. So, if you approach this essay as like, oh, what are the gaps that I need to fill? And then it comes across as just giving a whole bunch of excuses rather than telling a narrative, right? And weaving in these elements of leadership potential and teamwork and these other things into that narrative is much more effective. So, so be aware of that. One thing too that I would, as a part of this, for example, I worked with a candidate just last year who was applying to Wharton with just 1 year of work experience. And so we knew that this would be a gap in his app. And we said, oh, 1 year of work. So by the time he matriculated, he'd just have 2 years, which is really kind of the bare minimum for top tier schools for almost everybody. And so we knew that they'd be looking at this very carefully. So what did we do? We talked about the fact that he was given responsibilities beyond his years, and told stories about how he led an offshore team that was actually really struggling before he came in, and and that he organized things and how he went about these things, very methodically. And these were the things that that he did that showed, oh, I have that maturity, right? Like I have this depth of experience, even though it's only with 1 year of post-undergrad work experience, right? So that was a gap that we told a story to try to fill, rather than saying, oh, I know I only have 1 year of work experience, but believe me, I'm really good. Like, I'm good at this, I'm good at that, I'm good at this, I'm good at that. Like, kind of making excuses. No, just tell your story, right? Identify what the gaps are, and then just work that into your narrative, from your own perspective. Okay, I know that we're running a little bit behind here, but I'm going to keep going here. So, because I have another couple of strategies to tell you. Next thing within this strategy, number one, is to emphasize a theme. So because it doesn't say, oh, tell us one thing more that you would like us to hear, it just says, oh, what else do you want us to know? People might say, oh my gosh, I want you to know this, I want you to know that, I want you to know this over here, I want you to know that, I want you to know all sorts of stuff that I wasn't able to tell you. And because there's no word limit, like, you can just go on forever. Not a good idea. Think about the theme that what do you want this admissions officer to remember about you, right? What is it that you want them to really take away? They're not going to spend more than about maybe 5-10 minutes on this, so at most. And so, I mean, they have hundreds, each member of the board has hundreds of these that they have to read through. So don't just tell a whole bunch of stories that are disconnected experiences, because they're all things that you really want them to know about you. That's for your resume, right? Your resume can have all these different achievements. You just write one line about each one. And so don't feel like you have to recreate your resume. They have your resume. Instead, use the essay to connect the dots, right? How does this all fit together? How does this make you, right? What is the theme that you want this person to know about you when they've come when they've finished reading your entire application, and make sure that that comes out strongly in this essay. Okay, another strategy, and I'm not saying you have to only use one strategy or another. You can use a combination of these strategies, but another strategy is that first you start with the theme, right? Rather than looking at the gaps in your application, you start with the theme that you want to emphasize. So you brainstorm the elements of your personal profile that define you in a unique and interesting way. These could be values, attitudes, priorities, your cultural outlook, empathy that you have for others, and maybe how you gained that, right? What were the experiences that caused you to gain that? Your unique approach to challenges, how you gained that. And get introspective. Really think about the moments and influences that shaped these aspects of who you are as a person, right? So you, instead of looking at, oh gosh, this is what I'm worried about, that's what I'm worried about, these are the gaps in my application, instead you really get very introspective and you say, who am I? And what makes me me? And what makes me unique? And brainstorm these things. We go through at Veritas Prep some frameworks to help you do that brainstorming and really understand what makes you you and how you have expressed those things, and then brainstorm further on what were the experiences that caused you to become this way, that make you you. Strategy number 3, pick the stories first. So if you have some really compelling life stories that you want to include, you might identify those first. And say, oh yeah, this is what I really, I don't feel like these things are coming through in my application, and but I really want to be able to tell this story. That's fine, but don't just stop there and just tell that story. Look and say, identify how these experiences, these compelling life stories, have shaped you, right? So again, the themes and the impacts on you. So the caution here is, if you decide to kind of look at it this way, this strategy number 3, that admissions officers are not just looking for you to tell amazing stories. They really want to see how they've impacted you as a person, right? They really want to get to know you. So don't feel obligated to have some sort of enormous, momentous occasions in your life. You can include small moments that have shaped who you are today. And I found that these applications are actually really compelling because they're so genuine, right? They're so sincere. Some professional writer out there cannot write this for you. It has to be from you and from the heart. And because this is such a holistic experience, you can leave the enormous, momentous occasions to your resume and to the other aspects of your application, and then use the essay to really get at the essence of who you are. And sometimes that isn't enormous or momentous. Sometimes those are small moments, and that can be really compelling. Those are great stories. So that's another tip that I might include is, if you're looking at stories first, don't necessarily just pick huge, large events. Let's see here. So this is I give you the 3 strategies of looking at the gaps, identifying gaps that you want to that you feel like your application doesn't really tell well. I also said look at themes, right? What are the themes that that you want to have that admissions reader take away from this after just a quick read? And what are the stories, right? What are the occasions that you want to mention? And look at that to build your essay. If needed, also use this section to briefly describe any extenuating circumstances, so unexplained gaps in work experience, choice of recommenders, inconsistent or questionable academic performance, etc. This is what would typically go in just a standard optional essay, right? Saying, oh, there are some things that I want to mention about my application that may be kind of red flags that I want to talk to you about. However, we feel that this is best accomplished when woven into a broader narrative rather than just excuse making for your bad GMAT score or something like this. So incorporate it into your themes, right? Incorporate it into that broader narrative rather than just going through a whole list of excuses after this delightful essay that you've just written, okay? Very quickly, I know I don't have a whole lot of time. I want to mention the post-interview reflection because honestly, even though this is not a quote-unquote essay, and you should not pre-write drafts for this, you should go into the essay and then legitimately reflect on it, not trying to pre-write some sort of essay that you're going to get out. So it talks about that you've just had your HBS interview, and that did we get to know you, and to provide us a reflection on that experience, right? Saying, oh, did we really get to know you? Did you, were you able to get across what you wanted to say, and really reflect on that? And maybe you felt that the interview actually did go very well, and you say, oh yes, I felt that I was able to, even though the interview was very brief, I was able to really connect with the member of the board, and that I was able to speak about a number of different experiences across this, this, and that, and that you re-emphasize the themes, right, that you want to do. You got, oh, and I apologize, the text here is from the previous slide, but you also want to say, oh, actually, what I was, I had a very good conversation with the board member, and that we, spoke about this, this, and that, which I thought was valuable, and it was such a great conversation. We didn't even get to, topics of this, this, and that, which I really would have enjoyed speaking in greater depth about, this sort of thing. Make it brief. It should be just like a memo. It should be treated like a memo, in that you don't want it to be ridiculously long. You want it to be a nice brief reflection, and it needs to be written within 24 hours of your interview. In a nutshell, as I mentioned, the essays have been reduced significantly from as many as 7 in past years to just 1 optional essay this year. And what we've seen is that it really forces you to provide high-value information with your word count, right? They've been, in the past, they've been trying to force you into high-value information. Like, pick the most important things that you want to emphasize, and only those things, right? Now you have to force yourself to be concise, because there is no word limit, okay? So be aware of that. Remember, admissions officers are looking for a broader 360-degree view of applicants. It is not like law school or med school or dental school or these sorts of things, where it's really just kind of your statistics, and that's 90% of what gets you in, and then they don't really care about you as a person. That is not the case in business school. They really are admitting people as human beings. So being as human as possible in your application is valuable, right? And they do want to see these other aspects of who you are. You can incorporate things that you've done outside of work, and you should. And then remember that HBS is looking for the next generation of leaders. So as you're crafting this narrative, remember that, right? Are you promoting yourself as a future leader, right? Are you showing that kind of capability and that kind of maturity? Remember, tell stories. This is not a high school report on someone named you. This is you. So tell stories from your own perspective. Be personable, and include things that kind of show the admissions officer just a little glimpse of who you are as a human being, so that they can get that sense and like you, right? Using STAR, situation, task, action, result. Be genuine. Don't just try to dream up what you think the admissions officers want to hear. As D. Leopold mentioned, there is no correct answer to this, right? And they are not looking for one specific answer. They really are curious, I think, about what they're going to get out of this, very dramatic departure from your traditional MBA applications. By the end of the application, the admissions officer should get a real sense of who you are. And one question that I like to pose is, if you accidentally printed out this essay on your work computer or on your work printer, shared printer, and it had no name, no identifiable information there, it just got printed out without your name or anything, would someone pick that up, be able to read through it, and say, oh my gosh, this is Travis's essay, I better go take this to his desk? Is it that personal, right? Is it that identifiable that someone who knows you would be able to say, oh wow, I know who wrote this, and I'm going to give it to them without knowing your name, right? That level of personality needs to come through, and that level of of personal information and detail needs to come through as well. All right, so we have a few more minutes. I know that Christopher and Akila have been answering your questions as we've been going along, but we are to the Q&A session. So I am going to open up the floodgates a little bit more. You're more than welcome to ask any questions that may have come up that might be a little bit more specific to you personally, and to your situation. And so yes, let's open up for Q&A. Go ahead and go into the chat box there and type a bunch of questions. They're going to select some questions for me to answer as well. So go ahead and shoot off your questions here. While you're thinking about those questions and they're sending them through. I just want to mention that we at Veritas Prep have the largest team of admissions consultants, and we offer several available packages for you. So we have comprehensive school packages, everything start to finish, that you work with a team of consultants, your head consultant and school specialists like Akila and like Christopher on your package from start to finish. And you also get a review of your entire application from our Ultimate Admissions Committee. So these are former directors and associate directors of admissions at top-tier MBA programs who will review it before the HBS or whatever other school's admissions committee will ever see it. Before you submit it, you have to submit it to us. We have hourly packages, essay and resume editing services, and essential guides on all the top schools as well. Now, good, these questions are rolling in, so I'm going to answer some of these, and I will also allow Christopher and Akila to continue answering some within chat as well. So the question mentions post-MBA career goals. Where exactly should you mention this, and should it be covered in the essay? Good question. So in the application itself, you can mention your post-MBA career goals, and very briefly. And if you feel like that this is a pretty dramatic departure from what you're doing now, this could be a very good thing to mention in this essay, right? So if you are doing something like investment banking now, and you want to go into something like social enterprise marketing or something like this, right? That's a pretty big gap. And so you might mention this in your narrative, where you talk maybe a little bit about your story, how you've come to what you're doing now, and then link that to how you came to this future career goal and why it excites you, why you're passionate about it, why you want to go to HBS to be able to do it, this sort of thing, right? So that's important. How important is the essay in getting scholarships? Well, schools are very different from one to another. At HBS, the scholarships are need-based, and so the essays are only for admission, and so they do not affect your scholarships in any way. Visionaries think big. How do you write your essay like a visionary, but still not let the adcom think like you're bragging? Good question, very good question. One way that I would do this is, again, to show that you have this. First of all, you're absolutely right. They're looking for potential leaders. They're looking for people who have a clear vision for themselves and how they can make an impact on the world around them, right? And so you need to write your essays with that kind of vision, right? You were saying, swing for the fences. You say, oh, this is my dream. This is what I'm looking to do. These sorts of things, right? But also show how you've learned things along the way, right? Are you just like brilliant and amazing naturally? You just were born this way, and you've been incredible since the time that you took your first steps and said your first words, which were, "Oh man, I can't wait to go to Harvard Business School." No, right? You had to have learned. You had to have grown. You had to have made mistakes. You had to have learned from those mistakes. And the best leaders do learn from those kind of mistakes. And so I would say, yes, you can still have great vision, but you can also be a very personable person, right? You can be someone who's relatable. You can be someone who has gone through a real life and and has had to learn from it. So I think that would be very helpful. Are there any red flags in the eyes of admissions officers? Well, there's all sorts of red flags in the eyes of admissions officers. One thing that they really do look for are people who are not going to be team players, right? So you do have to be careful. You could be a very qualified applicant, but if there's and honestly, a lot of this does tend to come through the interview after you've kind of already gotten to that stage. But there could be red flags even in your essays that are kind of like, oh man, like this person is so full of themselves that I would be a little bit concerned about that. Other things too is one thing that I would caution you about is looking at the broad ranges that are published in regards to GMAT scores and GPAs. Um, so HBS will publish their entire range of the person who got the lowest GMAT score and the person who got the highest GMAT score. And people often think, oh my gosh, they admitted people who were in the 500s, and I have a 620. So clearly I'm going to get into Harvard Business School. No, if you look at the mean, which is about a 730, that means there are not very many people. But in fact, I would estimate that less than 25% of their class gets in with less than a 700 on the GMAT, right? And so people feel like, oh gosh, I have this whole essay to explain everything about my application that may not seem quite right, and then I'm going to get in because clearly my explanation is fantastic. I think we have to be particularly careful here because they've been whittling down and whittling down and whittling down these essays, and so the information that's presented in your application itself becomes all the more important, and it does need to be strong. You need to present a strong application throughout all of these aspects. So could you have a red flag, for example, that you do have the average number of years of work experience, like 4, but have you really done anything? Have you really set yourself apart from your peers? I mean, this is Harvard, for crying out loud. And the best business leaders in the entire world are going to be attending there. What makes you a member of that crowd, right? What have you done to really stand out, to say, wow, I am one of 900 people out of a world of 6 billion people who are going to attend Harvard Business School next year? What makes me really stand out, right? What makes me that? And I think a lot of people maybe don't take enough of that admissions officer's perspective as they are crafting their applications to say, oh yeah, wow, we must have this person in our school. Become that must consider candidate. And so I think a red flag might be that, yeah, you check off the boxes as far as all the statistics, but what really makes you stand out? All right. Sorry, I got to keep going here. How creative is too creative for a business school essay? Are there certain no-nos in terms of style? Very good question. So they are looking for future business leaders, right? And so I think, as you can probably tell from this webinar, I tend to come across as someone with personality and someone who has who's not just your bland standard sit at your desk in your cubicle business person who just types away or whatever, right? But I also strive to bring the appropriate level of decorum. Like, yes, do I want to make it entertaining? Yes, do I want to make it interesting? Yes. But they're not admitting a class of 900 class clowns. They want people who are going to fit well with the HBS culture. And if you've ever visited the school, or if you plan to, it is a formal culture, right? It is you must be in class, on time, dressed appropriately. Your comments are expected to add value. They they do not like people who just want to talk to hear themselves talk. And that will not get you points in class, these sorts of things. And so you do want to present yourself professionally. Now, that said, in some of my business school applications, did I even tell a little joke? Yes, I did, right? But was it, something like inappropriate? No, right? And so, can you be personable but still professional? Yes, right? And that's the goal. Interview goes the same way. Do you want to be horribly boring and just flat and not really let yourself shine through? No, of course not. But you're also not going to a party on Friday night. You're going to a business interview, right? So just be aware of that. Is age a concern that needs to be addressed in the essay? For example, if you're between 0 and 35. I love it. Yeah, in fact, on the admissions director's blog, if you just type in HBS admissions director blog, you can find it in Google. They've just recently posted what do you call it, like a bar graph, a histogram of kind of average years out of undergrad. and there's a very strong peak of 4 to 5 years of work experience out of undergrad. And so if you're well beyond that, this might be something that you could address. And so the gap in your application might be, why the heck are you going to business school now? However, one thing to note is kind of the long tail. And HBS is a school that is not afraid to admit high caliber, high potential people who are outside of that really narrow range of like 3 to 6 years of work experience, right? But just be aware that yeah, you might weave this into your narrative of what you've done up to this point, and then address address the age issue. But it's not something to be super self-conscious about, but it is something to note that you're not right in the sweet spot of recruiters that come to this school, who are typically looking for people with 3 to 6 years of work experience. So this may be something that you might want to elaborate a little bit more on, as far as like what your career goals are, how you're going to attain them, et cetera, et cetera. How does Harvard view community service? Would a lack of any community service be an absolute red flag in an application? This is important as far as your leadership potential and your what I would kind of lump into this idea of personal maturity. Community service. They do want to see that HBS alums are going to be valuable members of their communities, that they're going to be leaders in their communities, both your professional community and also society at large. They do not want Harvard Business School to be in the headlines for scandals or for their alums who have done horrible things. They want to be in the headlines for their alums who are doing fantastic things, right? They want to be in the headlines for their alums who are giving back and providing service to their communities. And so a track record of this coming into business school is definitely something that they would like to see. Now, if you don't really have that track record, you cannot just invent a track record. And because first of all, if you just invent it out of whole cloth, you can get yourself kicked out of school. And if you really try to trump up stuff that that is not that significant, it's just going to look that way. I mean, come on, we've seen thousands of these applications, and so don't try to become a person who you're not. However, this may be then something that you recognize as a gap, and so maybe you want to talk more about your motivations and what drives you and your values and things like this to show that you are a caring individual and a human being. Maybe there are experiences within your own family that you might talk about, as far as things that have shaped you as a person and as a leader, and get to that more personal aspect. Will that replace a track record of community involvement? No, but you can try to show these aspects of who you are in different ways. So we are now at time here, and I appreciate all the great questions that you guys have been putting forward, both to myself and to our HBS specialists who are have been answering in the chat box. Beat the GMAT is we're going to continue this conversation in their chat party. So if you go to beatthegmat.com and go to their MBA Watch under Harvard Business School, we have ourselves at Veritas Prep and other experts from other companies who are answering your questions regarding HBS and whatnot. So I want to just thank you all for your participation. It's been fantastic. If you have more questions about your individual circumstances, please feel free to reach out to us anytime. Feel free to write down this information or come to veritasprep.com, and we'll be happy to talk with you about your candidacy. On veritasprep.com, if you go to MBA admissions, right there on that MBA admissions homepage, you can sign up for a free profile evaluation. And one of our admissions experts will get back to you with very specific information for your circumstances. In the chat box, you can actually see the direct link to be able to join us on the chat party. So feel free to click that as well. And I just want to thank you all. This has been great. And if you have any other questions, feel free to shoot me an email here at info@veritasprep or give me a call, 1-800-925-7737. Thanks, everybody.